Why, hello everybody, how are you doing today? Hope you're enjoying your weekend. Probably looking at this video thinking, Rouga, what are you doing? Why are you going back and digging in this old well? Thought we were done with these Cult of the Lamb survival challenges. Well, hold your goddamn horses real quick and let me explain. For one, I like talking about indie games, and these survival challenges allow me to talk about more indie games. I have a long list of games to get to, and just because I like to take breaks from things every now and then doesn't mean that I'm completely done with them. There's a lot more games to get into, and while I do plan on taking breaks now and then from this particular universe, I will get to all of them. Secondly, it's been quite some time since I've talked about Cult of the Lamb, and when I went back to... Harley, would you stop breathing so damn loud? Secondly, it has been quite some time since I have returned to the world of Cult of the Lamb, and since then, there's been quite a few new additions to the universe. Not only in the lore, but new characters and all sorts of shit. For instance, the introduction of a whole new character known as the Goat, who is equivalent in power to that of the Lamb, and also described by the creators of the game as a sadistic and cruel being. They've also released several comic books that have given way more information on certain things and how they work within the game. Like, for instance, in the game, there were always these things called commandment stones, and you can use them to introduce new doctrines to your cult and basically rules that they need to follow. And that's always been the case. They were just these stones that introduce new rules to your cult. But the official and canon comic book that has been released has revealed that the commandment stones actually strip your followers of their free will and force them to follow whatever rules you deem as necessary. And yes, this is something that the Lamb does in canon and is required to do over the course of the story. So again, for people who keep defending the Lamb, saying that he's a good person, no he's not. I don't know if the game can scream in your face any more clearly that he's an evil piece of shit. He literally strips the free will of all of his people. He doesn't have to do that. There's also a character in the game, this big old duck guy who reads you these tarot cards, and you can acquire tarot cards from him. And for the longest time when you play the game, you think that those tarot cards allow this duck to see into the future and basically read people's fates. According to the comic books, that's not the case. In reality, he's not actually reading your fate, he's dictating it. This little duck dude actually has the ability to control the fate of others based on the cards that he picks. And the Lamb is shown throughout the course of the game to be able to go against what those cards dictate, meaning this gives the Lamb a certain resistance to fate manipulation, which he has not had prior. These are just a few of the many different abilities that the comic books have revealed exist that we didn't know prior. And that could make this conversation a little more interesting and also kind of ups the difficulty on the challenge as a whole. So, you know, that's a lot of fun. So I'm not going to stay here and go through every single little new thing that was added into the game because, I mean, that's just not what this video is about. But if it becomes relevant, I'll bring it up. And just know going into this challenge that it's going to be harder than last time. But I've wasted enough of your time. Let's get started. First up on the chopping block, we have Frisk from Undertale. And boy, oh boy, are some people gonna be pissed. So I'll just give you a bit of backstory. People have been asking me to put Frisk in these videos for a long time, and I've kind of avoided doing it because everyone always told me the same thing. Frisk is super powerful. He's one of the strongest video game characters of all time, one of the strongest indie characters of all time. He can erase timelines and destroy universes, and he can take on his entire universe at the same time without any issues whatsoever. He's stupidly overpowered, and I'm like, why would I use him? It's a survival challenge. I'm not just going to put in any old character that could wipe out the entire universe. That would be a boring conversation. There's a ton of multiversal characters I could throw in Cult of the Lamb that would instantly win, but then there's no conversation to be had. So I just sort of avoided using him. And then I played Undertale, and I realized very quickly, you motherfuckers were lying. Okay, so just to be clear, you weren't lying, but you were leaving out some very particular details. Just to give you an idea of what Undertale's all about, you play as yourself. You're a player, and you're essentially going through the story through the mind of this guy, Frisk. Frisk goes down into this underground world filled with monsters, and he starts doing a bunch of shit, but you're the person holding the remote, controlling what happens, and you are assisting Frisk in going through this underground world. And yes, throughout the story, depending on your decisions, you can have him erase timelines and destroy the universe and all that different kind of stuff. The problem is that within the internal logic of the game, Undertale Undertale is not the real world. It exists inside a game in the game. Like if you play Cult of the Lamb, yes, Cult of the Lamb is a video game, but in the internal logic of the game, they're still the real world. They're flesh and blood creatures living on an island with other flesh and blood creatures. You smash a rock, that rock's made of rock. It's all real. In Undertale, that's not the case. Frisk is not a real person. He's a digital character that is inside of a game with other digital characters who certain characters are aware they're inside of a video game. When you destroy a timeline, you're not actually destroying a timeline, you're destroying the save file. When Frisk goes back in time to redo something, it's because he's loading that save file and going back in time, and the game calls it going back in time, but certain characters call it out for what it is. You just saved your game and now you're going back. This is how the whole game works. When Frisk, Char, or whoever, they erase the entire universe, they're not actually erasing a legitimate universe, they're just destroying all the save files. What people are talking about in Undertale of him destroying the multiverse, known as True Reset, which is something you can do in the game, just erases all the save files you had before and allows you to start the game over from the very beginning. You're resetting the universe, but in reality, you're just deleting memory card space. The people who talk about Undertale being as powerful as they talk about it being are completely ignoring these factors and basically just pretending like the game doesn't constantly tell you that it's not real. Frisk does not have the ability to control time, destroy universes, or timelines. He's just an AI digital character who has power over his digital world. Even if he were to destroy the entire universe that he lives in, it wouldn't be like destroying a real universe, it would just be him erasing data. In Undertale, the entire world of Undertale is a lesser realm that exists lower than that of our real world human world. Like, for instance, the human player who plays the game and has his hand on the remotes is kind of viewed as God to the characters within the game. A lot of people are going to argue things like Frisk has the ability to destroy the souls of people he fights and resist soul destruction because every single character within the game's attacks directly affect the soul. But that's not accurate because multiple times in the game it is stated that one basic bitch human soul is enough to overpower the souls of every monster in the entire Undertale universe. Frisk does not have the power of soul absorption. The monsters say that humans can absorb monster souls because of how much stronger human souls are than monster souls. It's not that Frisk is so unbelievably powerful, it's that the universe of Undertale in general and all of the monsters are so weak that Frisk basically becomes a god when he goes there. Monsters in this world are significantly weaker than that of your average basic child human. And this is written in as part of the story. And all of these people, scalers mostly, completely ignore all of this extra context and say, no, Frisk is a universe destroyer and can erase timelines and all this shit, and they just ignore everything else. It's literally stated in the game by multiple characters that it would take every single monster in the Undertale universe to take on one human soul, because a human soul is more powerful than a monster soul. How could you possibly read that and think that Frisk is so much more powerful than the monsters and that power level would just overcome every other fictional character, despite them straight up saying that monsters are much weaker? It's the same old bullshit I've talked about many times, where people just take in the things they want and ignore the things they don't to try and force their characters to be as powerful as humanly possible. Frisk honestly is one of the weakest characters that I've ever put on these lists, and Undertale is one of the weakest universes I've ever put on this list. So if I take Frisk and throw him into the Cult of the Lamb universe, how's he going to do? What can he actually do? Well, he's going to lose all his time manipulation abilities because he's no longer capable of controlling save files, because save files don't exist in the real world. He's not going to be able to destroy the universe because you can't reset and affect a memory card to a real world that doesn't have memory card space. All his soul abilities, while I'm not going to go as far as to say it'll be completely worthless, it'll be mostly worthless because, again, he'll be fighting characters who have much stronger souls than just a basic human. And his basic human soul that can overcome all the monsters aren't going to overcome things like death gods and extremely powerful dark magic users. Even his creation abilities, where in the game Frisk has the ability to draw things and then create them into reality, that's something he's capable of doing because the player can add new things into the world for him. Because again, the player, a basic average asshole like you and me, sitting on a couch with a remote in our hand, has godlike power in his universe. Because his universe is a digital world that we can affect. The only power that Frisk is really going to have that's going to be useful is his determination ability. And admittedly, it's pretty cool. So basically, Frisk Frisk has determination, and essentially his physical ability and what he can do increases based on how determined he is. The more determined he is, the more powerful he becomes, and he can essentially have, well, in his universe, damn near limitless power. Now, the vast majority of the time, that power just comes in the form of enhanced physical abilities, but he's also been shown being able to resist certain things like being put to sleep or being controlled in different ways. Like, he can use it to resist certain types of hacks as well. So that's basically all he's going to get when he goes into this universe, because literally everything else he has is tied into the game mechanic of him being in a video game. And with those abilities, how far is he going to get? Not very far, honestly. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still just a child, and his determination might allow him maybe to overcome some basic bitch units, possibly. And even if we give him the benefit of the doubt and be like, he can overcome gods with enough of that shit, okay, fine, but even in the story of his own game, his determination is not always at maximum. It constantly flows up and down throughout the story of the game based on a variety of factors, and it just can't be trusted that he'll always be at max determination, especially considering what he's going to go through in this particular game and the hopelessness that exists in the lands of the old faith. And even if we just say that he's at max determination at all times, he's never shown being able to resist half of the shit that happens in the Cult of the Lamb with that determination. He's never been able to resist being thrown into a hell dimension. He's never been able to resist just instant death manipulation. He's never been able to resist being transformed into a little fucking bug. There's literally hundreds of things that can happen to him that his determination has never been able to resist in his own game, so there's no reason to believe it would happen here. And even if he did overcome and kill the bishops or kill the lamb or whatever on his first try, they can keep coming back. He's got no way of keeping them down, and he has no way of coming back to life anymore because it's always the player that saves the game for him and brings him back. And he's not going to have a player here because he's no longer in a video game. I know you guys are going to say that this is no fair, but this is how the story of the game was written. You guys are ignoring the story of the game, not me. I'm actually taking the story and the character of Frisk into account. That's what these videos are all about. It's not to jerry-rig the fucking numbers to make him as strong as humanly possible. That's never been what I've done with these videos. So I'm not really sure why you guys would expect me to do it now. I know people are gonna be mad about this. I mean, Undertale was one that I was constantly asked to do, and pretty much everyone thought he was gonna fucking fly through this shit easily. Oh man, this is gonna be rough. I'm gonna have a lot of shit to deal with now. Whatever. It is what it is. Next up, we have Shantae from the Shantae series. And man, do I know that some boys' balls dropped to this character. I mean, god damn, look at that shit. Oh, that is just some good old-fashioned family fun right there. You know, with all the game designers nowadays being super obsessed with making every single character as fugly as humanly possible, sometimes it's nice to just admire something that looks good. You know what I'm saying? This is nice. This is nice. So Shantae is a half genie that lives in a world where there were humans and there were genies, and the genies were guardians of the humans. They were called guardian genies, and they protected the humans from all sorts of outside evil threats. For whatever reason, all of the fucking guardian genies disappeared, and all that's left on the world now are their children who mated with humans who are now half genies. And now these half genies have to basically take their place as the new guardian genies, but they're considerably less powerful, so it makes their job a whole lot fucking harder. Shantae is one of these guardian genies, and in every game some kind of shit happens and she has to deal with some sort of evil force. Usually this fucked up but also very hot pirate bitch known as Risky Boots, because you know there's like no ugly characters in this entire series, and it's good. It's a good series. One of the strongest points of this series is Shantae herself. She's actually a pretty complex character for what's just basically an animated kids game where you're a side-scrolling genie bitch who beats up people with her hair. She has a lot of complex emotions and thoughts, and it was kind of interesting to see from a game like this. She's upbeat and optimistic, but not to an obnoxious extent. She has insecurities about her lack of power and her lack of ability to be able to protect those around her. She puts a lot of her value as a person in her magical ability and her ability to protect others. She has virtually no patience and a very short fuse and will blow up on even close friends of hers who get on her nerves, which happens very, very often. She's a very well-written, well-rounded character. And that was just kind of cool to see from a game like this. So what exactly can Shantae do? Well, she can transform into all sorts of different types of creatures, from an elephant to a giant bat creature to a harpy to a mermaid and all kinds of other stuff. She has fire powers and water powers and rock powers and all kinds of different elemental powers. She has all sorts of different magical items that allow her to do things like teleport and things like that. She can control her hair for some reason and use her hair as a weapon, and she like whips it and it goes whoosh and it kills people. The one thing that she can't do is grant wishes, which is kind of, okay, so this is sort of something that confused me as I was playing through these games. Throughout the series, she only seems to grant one wish, and it's cool, like the island that they're on was basically destroyed and she brings it back, but she's never done that before or after, and it doesn't seem like she has the ability to grant wishes normally. She's never granted a wish to like wipe the evil out of the area or to overcome some great threat outside of physical force. Like, she just doesn't do that. So I don't really know how her wishing abilities work. As of right now, I basically have to take that one wishing scene as like an outlier because she's literally never done it outside of that one moment. And what else could she do? She lifted 1,000 pounds over her head with one arm. That's pretty impressive. She's super fucking fast, able to dodge bullets and cannon fire and shit. I've seen some people say that she's fast enough to create after images. Not really. I mean, that's clearly shown to be a magical ability, her creating after images, so it's not a speed thing. But also, after image creation isn't really reliable on measuring speed anyway, as it depends how far you are away from the person in order to make the after image. So it wouldn't matter either way, but that is something she can do, is create after images. That's, you know, that's kind of cool. So if we throw this fine ass genie bitch into the Cult of the Lamb, what exactly would happen? Well, sadly, she wouldn't do particularly well for a couple of reasons. One being, like a lot of characters that I've put through this challenge, she is a heroic character that has to go out of her way to protect the innocent and stop evil. It is written into her. She is essentially a Saturday morning cartoon hero in that particular aspect. And if she does that, she has no choice but to go up against the most powerful people on the island who she doesn't stand a chance against. Her magic is very basic and has been shown several times in her own games that it's super limiting in a way that the magic of Cult of the Lamb just straight up isn't. Now, does that mean I think she's gonna die? No, so much worse. So a plot point of the Shantae games is there's this character called Naga Shantae, which is just Shantae when she's corrupted by dark magic, and I don't really see how that's not gonna happen here. Not just the Lamb, but a lot of characters throughout this entire series use dark magic as well as corrupting magic. Like the black ichor that comes out of the Lamb's body is literally a corrupting force that corrupts all that touch it. Basically, if Shantae can survive long enough to actually fight against someone who uses dark magic and this corrupting magic, which is a lot of characters on the island, she's going to pretty much instantly be corrupted and turn into Nega Shantae, which is an evil version of her character. Once that happens, the likelihood that she gets indoctrinated into one of the cults skyrockets. This isn't really that big of a threat in her own universe because this sort of corrupting dark magic is kind of rare, but in the Cult of the Lamb universe, it's basically all of the magic there is. And in her game, she was able to overcome it by the power of her friends pulling her out of it. But like every character in these challenges, we're putting them in here by themselves. She's not going to have any friends that are going to be able to pull her out of this situation. So you can basically say goodbye to Shantae, and Nega Shantae will be the new character that we will be talking about here. And like I said, once that happened, indoctrination is right around the corner. I mean, her mind is already corrupted, so you can't really say that she's going to resist the mind corruption that Lamb and the bishops are capable of doing to other people. So as uncomfortable as it may be, I think the Lamb's got a new wife. Okay, I mean, come on, guys. You do not take a chick that looks like that and indoctrinate her into a sex cult and not take advantage of that opportunity. Especially if you're an evil death god. Come on now. Looking at me like I'm the fucking weirdo here. Next up on the list, we have Graveyard Keeper from Graveyard Keeper. Originally, I was going to have the Farmer from Stardew Valley on here, but then I came across this little gem and thought, no, that's way more interesting. So if you haven't played Graveyard Keeper, it's basically Stardew Valley if you were super fucking evil. So the basic premise of the game Graveyard Keeper is that you're this guy in the real world and you get sucked in this crazy alternate reality where you are forced to become a graveyard keeper at this, you know, I guess fantasy world that you've been put into. Now, obviously the Graveyard Keeper is not a big fan of this, and he's obsessed with getting back home to his one true love. Like, that's the whole point of the game. The thing that makes this character interesting is what he's willing to do to actually have that happen. The Graveyard Keeper is shown to be a character that is completely morally reprehensible and is willing to do literally anything to get home. And due to that, he has a list of crimes that are almost as long as the Lamb's himself. This is a man who will open up a restaurant and cut up the corpses of dead bodies to sell as meat to other people. This is a man who murders people for his own gain. At one point, he poisons the drinking water of an entire town, dooming them to disease and all kinds of other horrors. He's delved into black magic, made deals with vampires who were feeding on people in a nearby nearby town for his own benefit. Like, he literally will do anything. And this makes him an interesting character because he doesn't do any of this stuff out of malice. He doesn't actually care to go out of his way to hurt people. It just sort of is what it is. And he's okay at doing it as long as it gets him what he wants. Now, many people who are a bit morally confused may say that he's not a bad guy because he just wants to get home and see his love. I don't particularly agree with those people. I think that every evil deed has some kind of reason behind it. That doesn't necessarily make it not an evil deed. The sin the Graveyard Keeper has is that of selfishness and greed. While yes, people say that envy is the root of all evil, I don't agree with that at all. Jealousy's bad and all, but it takes a certain form of selfishness to go out of your way to take something that someone else has. Selfishness is where the real demons lie, and this motherfucker's got that shit in spades. He just generally doesn't care what happens to other people as long as he gets what he wants. And he becomes a rather powerful force to reckon with throughout the course of this game. So what exactly can the Graveyard Keeper do? Well, he can do a lot of stuff, but really the main thing that's going to make him so unbelievably dangerous is just how learned he is. The Graveyard Keeper's best ability is the fact that anything that he wants to learn or educate himself on, he can do so, and he does it very, very fast. When he originally becomes a Graveyard Keeper, he has absolutely no skills. Through educating himself and learning about his environment, he is capable of teaching himself how to fight, how to smith weapons, how to become a Graveyard Keeper, how to use dark magic, how to cook, how to farm. He becomes completely self-sufficient, and the ridiculous speed that he is capable of teaching himself any new skills that he needs to know to survive in this world is really goddamn impressive. By the end of the game, he is the most powerful force in this universe, and he basically has his own little kind of cult where it's just filled with a bunch of zombies that he brought back from the dead and enslaved to have do all sorts of tasks that he wants them to do. His whole operation becomes entirely self-sufficient without him even needing to be there. So how would he do if he arrived in the lands of the old faith? I think he would do really, really well. He has all of the knowledge and skill that he would need to survive. He's capable of building his own shelter, his own weapons, his alchemy. He's capable of using corpses to turn into soldiers to fight for him. He has skills in swordmanship so that he can fight for himself. And more importantly than all that, he has no real reason to go after the bishops or the lamb, and they don't really have any reason to go after him either. He doesn't really provide any value for them. The Graveyard Keeper is going to set up his own home base. He's going to start building his little buildings and things like this and sort of making his camp. Anyone who comes at him, he'll kill, and he'll resurrect their body to use as slave labor for his camp, and he'll just sort of build this completely self-sufficient camp that all of the other cultists are going to look at and be like, don't go there. Like, don't fuck with that guy because he's going to kill you and turn you into a zombie slave. If he ever does come across someone like the Lamb or the Bishops, he's very likely to offer them some kind of deal or trade in exchange for him being there, and they'll likely accept it. These guys aren't stupid. None of the Bishops or the Lamb are really shown to go out of their way to kill people who aren't starting shit with them and trying to basically overthrow their whole fucked up cultist culture that they've created on the island. At the end of the day, the Graveyard Keeper is a clear capitalist and is perfectly okay with dealing with all sorts of fucked up people if it means his own success and bring him closer to getting home to his beloved. So yeah, I basically see him being another independent psychopath like Midas or Sozo. Somebody who really doesn't bother with the cults and the cults don't really bother with them, and the basic bitch cultists know, let's just not go there. Last up, but certainly not least, we have Gunmancer from Wizard with a Gun. And out of all the games I've talked to so far in this video, this one has the most interesting premise. So the game takes place after the entire world was destroyed by this being called Chaos. There's this god named Chaos, and he's like a god of chaos, and yeah. Anyway, he releases chaos onto the world and it completely gets destroyed. You are the Gunmancer, who basically is just living on one of these floating pieces of earth that's just kind of floating through space, and you have a time machine. But the time machine only lets you go back like 5 minutes before the world was destroyed. So use the time machine, go back 5 minutes before the world was destroyed, and find pieces of the time machine that let you go farther and farther back. And you keep doing this over and over again. Eventually you go back 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. And you keep doing that until you can go back far enough to stop the world from being destroyed in the first place. So basically you're using time manipulation bullshit to save a world that was already destroyed. Pretty fucking cool. On top of that, the concept of the Gunmancer is also very cool. You're a wizard with a gun. How is that not cool? As the Gunmancer, you can collect and create this thing called Arcana, which gives you the ability to use magic, and you imbue bullets with magic, this arcana shit, which allows you to do all sorts of different effects. You have poison bullets, fire bullets, destruction bullets, force bullets, charm bullets, and all sorts of different crazy bullets that allow you to do all sorts of different crazy things. And you use these to fight against the forces of chaos to save the planet. And that's it. That's the whole game. So, how would the Gunmancer do if he went down to the lands of the old faith? I think he would do relatively well. The only thing we know about the Gunmancer is that he wants to fix the Shattered and bring the Earth back. If he's in the lands of the old faith, the Earth is already brought back, so we don't really know what his motivation would be, outside of just surviving. So for the purpose of this challenge, that's all I'm gonna say he needs to do. Like, there's no evidence that the Gunmancer would go out of his way to try and wipe out the gods and save everyone from the land. It's not really his whole deal. He just wanted to stop everything from being destroyed. Outside of that, he doesn't really have that much of a character. And in terms of his ability to survive, it's pretty goddamn high. I mean, he has a lot of cool shit. For one, he's armed to the teeth. He has every kind of gun you can imagine, from explosives to sniper rifles to machine guns. He's got a fucking Uzi, he's got shotguns, all sorts of stuff. And they all have crazy different magical bullets that they fire that do really cool different things. He can mind control people with a bullet. He can shoot a bullet across the way and then teleport to where the bullet lands. He has a teleportation bullet. And he's also a master at crafting. He can craft his guns. He can craft alchemy tables and things that he can create new bullets with. He can craft pretty much anything he needs in order to survive. And much like the Lamb, he can use magic to craft them. So in Cult of the Lamb, if you're the Lamb and you want to make something, you have to have the materials for it, and then you can use magic in order to turn those materials into the thing you want to make. So it's basically instant. And the wizard can craft this shit basically instantly. Unlike the Lamb, who forces slave labor onto his followers when I feel like he could just build them normally with magic, the Gunmancer actually does do that. He needs the materials to build the things he wants to build, but once he does, he just uses magic to turn those materials into the thing he wants to make, which will be super useful in getting him set up very, very quickly. And as far as surviving your basic cultists go, he's gonna do relatively well. I mean, he's strapped as fuck. Just the fact that he uses guns and fires bullets means the cultists shouldn't be faster than he is when it comes to him hitting them. But really the most interesting point when it comes to this particular thing, a bullet that he has that I think should be really useful, I just don't understand how it would be useful. So in the game, he fights chaos, which, like, the literal force of chaos. I don't know if it's a conceptual being necessarily, but it's a whole bunch of beings called chaos, and they're this pink light things, and you can shoot them and you can hurt them. Well, he has a bullet called an order bullet, which basically fights against chaos. It can do things like, if you shoot a, I don't know, fucking broken TV set, the order bullet will fix the TV. Like, the order bullet fights against destruction, anarchy, and chaos, and it does massive damage to these beings he fights that are chaos, because they are literally, I guess, the concept of chaos. I don't know how that bullet would be useful in Cult of the Lamb, but I feel like it would be useful. You know what I mean? Like, on one hand, I'm like, maybe not, because the Lamb isn't a force of chaos. He's actually technically a force of order. I mean, he's an authoritarian figure who mind controls people and forces them to do what he wants to do. I mean, he dictates laws and then steals the will of people so that they follow those laws. He really shouldn't be a force of chaos. But at the same time, I feel like a bullet like that should do something. Like, if he went up against Leshy, right? Leshy is one of the bishops in Cult of the Lamb. He is actually the bishop of chaos. Order would automatically do more damage to that bishop than any other bullet he has, because it specifically fights against chaos. I don't know. I feel like you should do something to the Lamb. I just don't know what. Like, I don't know how it would be useful. Something that amazing can't be useless. You know what I mean? Is that weird? You get what I'm throwing down? Outside of that, he's going to fight through all the cultists. I think he's going to fight through most of the bosses too. He's just going to have to not get hit and basically just shoot everybody. Super easy. And when he gets to the bishops, other than Leshy, who he actually has the kryptonite against, I think he's going to fall. But much like other characters I've put in the Cult of the Lamb, I don't think he has much of a reason to go out of his way to stop them. He just doesn't have enough of a personality for me to assume that he's automatically going to go and fight against the gods of this universe. I think he's going to be more like a survivalist, and if he does just be a survivalist out in the woods, building camps, traveling around, you know, almost like Kang from Kung Fu or something, helping people that he comes across, meeting friends and shit along the way, all that good shit, he'll likely be fine, as long as he doesn't go after the bishops and the bishops really won't care to go after him. Why would they if he's not trying to bring them down? And while many of the basic cultists are very powerful, like for instance in one of the comics there's a cultist that is shown to grow to the size where he can pick up a dude and hold them in one hand, they're really strong. They are capable of using dark magic and all kinds of other crazy stuff. They can do impressive shit. But as long as you're capable of fighting against them, you should be okay. And something that I'm starting to see as I talk more and more about Cult of the Lamb is basically, if you're not power hungry and you're not a hero, your odds of survival go up greatly. Like if you need to stop the evil and horrors that happen on the island, you're pretty much gonna die. But at the same time, if you're an evil, power hungry asshole that feels like you want to take over a bunch of shit, you're probably also gonna die. Morally good, neutral, and evil characters that don't feel an obsessive need to get on the nerves of the bishops in the Lamb should really do just fine. And I think the Gunmancer fills that role. Maybe you can argue that because the Gunmancer did fight so hard to fix the world, that he would want to fix everything that's going on the island. But I mean, those are two completely different situations, and I'm not gonna jump to that conclusion right off the gate. Maybe I could be convinced otherwise, but as of now, I'm not seeing it. But that's going to be all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. And also, as a special bonus for today and only today, you can have Shantae as a weird sex slave wife. That could be kind of fun, you sick fuck. And always remember, y'all stay safe out there, you hear?